Welcome to the Eric Brady podcast, Series 1, Adolf Hitler, His Bombers and Me. Episode 6, Communal Shelters. So Eric, you had an Anderson shelter at the bottom of your garden, but I understand there were communal shelters as well.
Street shelters were built in London and other major cities, and they again were very solidly built brick structures with thick roofs on. They were equipped also with bunks, which were sometimes used for purposes other than the government had intended. And eventually the doors were locked permanently, but a key was in the local warden's house. They were often used, particularly in the more crowded parts of the big cities, and they saved many lives. I remember as a boy seeing pictures, posters pinned up of street shelters surviving when all the streets around them were in shattered ruins. So many people's lives were saved by those.
I've put a picture of a street shelter in Hornsey on the YouTube version of the podcast. That was from the Imperial War Museum. I also found pictures of basements used as shelters and shelters under railway arches. I understand that London Underground train network stations were also used for shelters.
They have been used, in fact, in the Gotha and Zeppelin raids in World War I. And when it was proposed at the outbreak of World War II that they should be used again in the same way, at first the government refused. One of the reasons for that was because the intense fear, particularly by Herbert Morrison, the Home Secretary, was that as London was bombed, all around the docks area, where of course the River Thames was, the underground ran underneath the Thames. And with all the bombs raining round, including going into the Thames at times, he was terrified, and he said, kept him awake at night worrying about it, of the bombs hitting one of the tubes running underground, and the tubes being flooded and killing hundreds and hundreds of people. Then the population broke down the barriers when they were first locked, after the tubes had gone, and just flooded in. And so in the end, the government recognised that this was going to happen, and so kept them open. And while the tubes were running, people still will go down there and sleep against the wall, still leaving a little way for the passengers of the tube trains to get out and get in.
The Imperial War Museum even has a picture of people settling down to sleep between the rails after the services had stopped, and other places where presumably disused tracks had been covered over to create shelters.
They became so organised that they had music sessions down there, organised dances, cups of tea were sold, families got together and made friends with each other, and Vera Lynn went down between her radio shows and would entertain people down there. Another shelter that was used by the people who lived near Chislehurst was a huge Chislehurst caves. And again, they were flooded at night by people going in from the nearer parts of London and local villages. And they had parties and dances and musicals and sing-alongs. The biggest underground shelter was at Clapham Common, where there were 8,000 people would gather. Massive number down there.
Were there bombing raids most nights requiring people to go into shelters?
Yes. After the main Blitz, which was day and night, for a time in 1940 from September the 7th, they switched to just nighttime raids, and so the terror bombing still continued in all major cities.
To buy your copy of Adolf Hitler, His Bombers and Me to read alongside the series, go to ericbradybooks.co.uk. The Eric Brady podcast can be found on YouTube, podcast services, and at ericbrady.blogspot.com.